kung titignan mo si Trump, ayaw niya na gumastos at ayaw niya na nai-stretch masyado ang military capacity ng United States outside of its own borders. So kung si Trump, pero kung si Harris, ang perception, it will continue. Kasi Democrat, and Biden is a Democrat. So baka it's a continuation lang ng mga policies ni Biden. Kasi nga siya yung vice president ni Biden, 'di ba? So at saka Democrat 'yan. So ganun yung kanilang sinususugan. So parang ganun ang debate. Pero sa Pilipinas kasi crucial. Kasi we don't know if Trump will support BBM still, if Trump will be elected as president. Seryoso at malalaking kumpanya will never risk investing in a country na ganon ang sitwasyon. Ganon din ang kanilang nababasa. So hindi yan. Kasi syempre, delikado ang investment mo, 'di ba? Hindi mo alam kung mag-generate ng income yan or madi-disrupt yan anytime soon. So hindi talaga. Yun ang problema ng Pilipinas. Another one is domestic. Ang domestic na sitwasyon ng Pilipinas, mayroon kang, in a way, political instability na hindi pa naman ganun kalaki or ang magnitude niya, pero makikita mo may mga gitgitan between contending contending powers, politicians or political families in the country. Pangalawa, ang corruption mo, very mataas ang index ng corruption mo sa Pilipinas at this time. So, yun yung mga factors na yon ang nagkakaroon ng parang agam-agam ang mga seryoso at malalaking kumpanya na would want to invest in the country. So sa akin kasi ang may mga nabasa akong reports at saka syempre meron din mga reports from the Philippines, but there are other reports also from other countries and even from dun mismo sa mga kaibigan natin na nag-attend ng summit, na ASEAN summit sa Laos. So far naman kasi, kung ako ang tatanungin niyo, sa akin kasi walang problema for a country like the Philippines na may dispute tayo with several countries from ASEAN, and that would include Malaysia, Vietnam, and even Brunei, and now you have also a country like China na may dispute din with us over the South China Sea, na ang Pilipinas sa pangunguna ng Pangulong BBM, ipresenta mo ang iyong concern sa level ng ASEAN. At syempre, para maintindihan din ng China yung concern mo as a country, especially when you talk about the South China Sea dispute. However, I think there is a proper timing to that, there is a proper venue to that, and at the same time, there's such a thing as yung spirit at saka yung tinatawag mong ASEAN context. Kasi sa ASEAN kasi, if you really look at ASEAN and ASEAN countries and even ASEAN leaders, when you talk about how you bring up an issue sa level ng ASEAN, there's such a thing as an ASEAN values and an ASEAN way of doing it. And usually ASEAN counterparts or ang ASEAN level, ang approach dyan, it's non-confrontational. You have to be very polite. You have to deliver your concern in a way that it will not be rude, or it will be in a very diplomatic manner. Ganon siya sa ASEAN level. Kasi you don't see ASEAN countries criticizing other countries openly in public or even engaging a leader of another country in a confrontational manner. Kasi ang ASEAN talaga is a non-confrontational ang kanilang approach, and it's a venue for diplomacy, negotiation, but you do it in a manner that you're not approaching too aggressively. So ganon dapat. So sa akin, as long as you do it in that manner, very respecting dun sa tinatawag mong ASEAN values, an ASEAN way of doing things, an ASEAN conduct, na ini-expect ng mga ASEAN counterparts sa lahat ng ASEAN member countries, especially sa leaders nila, walang problema yon. Kasi it's a legitimate issue naman when you talk about the South China Sea issue, at saka legitimate naman din na may conflict talaga tayo with not only with China but even with other ASEAN countries. Pero tayo kasi, ang focus natin lagi is China. Hindi natin nakikita yung ibang other claimant states China tayo So in that sense, okay lang. Pero yung manner of doing it matters a lot. Kasi ang labas mo doon is you're so confrontational, and it's not the ASEAN way. And other countries as well, especially Asian countries, they do negotiation politely, diplomatically, and sometimes, usually when it's about sensitive issue, you don't really even bring it up openly in public. usually may mga tinatawag kang backdoor diplomacy na tinatawag, or you talk it out in a more low key or not so much in the media or in the limelight. So in that sense, I don't have a disagreement when you talk about presenting our concern in the South China Sea to the ASEAN body and to the ASEAN counterparts, even to China. But the manner of doing it, I think, matters a lot. Kung gusto mong irespeto ka at pakinggan ka at hindi ka magmukhang agresibo at medyo offensive, not necessarily to China but to other members of ASEAN. Yun yung punto ko doon eh. So, ang dating ata ni Pangulong BBM is medyo, ang nasagap ko kasing mga, ang mga feedback from from different counterparts in ASEAN is it was a little bit confrontational, and it was a little bit not within the proper setting. Kasi I think Premier Lee of China was talking about trade and how trade is a very important mechanism by which ASEAN countries and China are trying to help each other, and it's more about economic issues. It was not about security issues. But I think PBBM made an intervention saying that you cannot talk about economic cooperation without political security. I think everyone in the region understand that. But the way you deliver it, the timing is very important. So doon medyo siguro nagkaroon ng controversy. That's why it becomes like a topic actually, because I was attending. On the other hand, habang nangyayari yung ASEAN summit sa Laos, attended by head of states ng ASEAN countries and other countries like the United States and China and other countries. Ako naman, I was attending actually a people-to-people ASEAN +1 summit as well sa Beijing, which was represented actually by people's organization na from different countries in ASEAN, from the 10 countries in ASEAN, including China. So, in a way, parallel yun na nangyayari. So, habang nangyayari yung Laos, nangyayari din yung sa amin. So, parang napapag-usapan siya among ASEAN counterparts. Ito sa level ng people to people. So, may mga comments akong narinig, pero of course, I will not really, kumbaga, hindi na ako nag-engage masyado kasi syempre it was the Philippines that is being talked about. So ako naman, nakikinig na lang ako dun sa mga comments. And of course, sometimes you make some comments pero hindi masyado. Pero mas ganun yung tingin ko, yung sagot ko.
Prof, dito sa mga kapitbahay ba natin sa ASEAN, na meron ding, lalo na yung may mga claims din dyan sa South China Sea, ano yung nila, naging vocal din ba sila? Kasi kumbaga naging tahimik ba sila o naging vocal din sila? Ini-insist ba nila, kagaya din ba sa Pilipinas, yung pag-insist nila sa kanilang karapatan dyan sa pinagagawang teritoryo na para sabihin ng Pangulo na, oy, ito yung mga bagay na hindi natin pwede palampasin, no? Hindi natin dapat pwede ignore, dapat ito'y nakikita natin. Siguro nasabi yon ng Pangulo kasi hindi ba naririnig, hindi ba vocal o iba yung strategiya ng ibang bansa?
Kasi yun yung sinasabi ko, there is such a thing as an Asian way of resolving dispute and conflict. And I think most ASEAN countries, except the Philippines, are resolving the dispute in the South China Sea or yung management ng conflict in a non-confrontational manner, or what you call the Asian way or ASEAN way. Yun eh. So if you really look at them, they are trying to talk it out with China and negotiate with China, and at the same time have very good political and economic relation with China. At saka kung makikita mo, hindi maingay ang ibang claimant state, even Vietnam, no. I don't think Malaysia and even Brunei. So makikita mo, sila low key, but they are negotiating. They're trying to balance things out, and at the same time, they are negotiating and talking with China not in the media, not in a megaphone diplomacy kind of thing, but very, very tahimik, kumbaga very quiet diplomacy. Yun ang kanilang strategy. Pero sa atin kasi, iba yung strategy natin. We're very aggressive, we're very confrontational, and that is not the ASEAN way, and that's not even the Asian way. That's the Western way of resolving conflict. And I don't think that works. Kasi the more you do that, the more na iba ang tingin sa'yo ng mga karatig na bansa na para bang ang ingay-ingay mo and you affect actually the whole region kasi nag-escalate kasi ang tension between China and the Philippines.
Opo.
And one more thing I think that is very distinct sa atin is we are trying to, ang issue kasi ng Pilipinas is not only the South China Sea. The other issue na medyo uncomfortable ang ASEAN, ang ating counterparts sa ASEAN and even other Asian countries is the mere fact that ang Amerika, the United States has a very strong influence on our foreign policy, especially when you talk about the South China Sea. Makikita mo yun. We cannot deny that. The foreign policy of BBM is very much leaning to the United States. It's very obvious. So doon medyo uncomfortable ang ibang counterparts natin kasi sa kanila they are pursuing independent foreign policy. Their policy on the approach in the South China Sea when you talk about resolution of the dispute is peaceful, diplomatic, and at the same time quiet. On our side, we are leaning to the United States and asking them to be like our big brother who will kind of fight with us over the South China Sea, but it's not even happening. On the other hand, maingay tayo kasi megaphone diplomacy ang ginagawa na strategy natin, very, very aggressive. In that sense, nagda-diverge ang ating approach sa South China Sea when you talk about resolving dispute and the approach of other counterparts in ASEAN. So yun talaga ang totoo dyan. So ang nangyayari, tayo lang ang maingay. So parang feeling natin, hindi tayo sinusuportahan ng ibang ASEAN countries. When in fact, they're also resolving the dispute in a quiet way with China. But I don't think, ito lang sasabihin ko rin, from my discussion with our ASEAN friends, I don't think ASEAN countries would like the South China Sea to be tension-driven. I don't think so.
Opo.
I think what the ASEAN counterparts, ang gusto nila sa South China Sea is maging peaceful yan, hindi pagmulan ng conflict yan, at yung dispute, i-manage yan diplomatically and peacefully. Ibig sabihin, you can talk to China, negotiate with China, and also talk to the ASEAN counterparts. How you gonna, as a bloc, resolve the issue talking to China as a bloc. So may ganun. Kaya nga dapat bilateral and multilateral. Pero yung approach natin talaga to the South China Sea dispute in terms of trying to resolve, pero parang hindi naman nare-resolve kasi nga very aggressive, is completely different from the way Vietnam, Malaysia, especially Malaysia and Brunei, yung approach nila medyo iba sa atin.
So kumbaga,
sa kanila,
Prof,
quiet.
Opo. Kumbaga, Prof, tayo lang ang naiiba sa lahat ng nasa ASEAN?
Yes.
Walang kahalintulad sa atin
Actually,
style?
Wala. Sorry to say, wala talaga. Ito pa may bagong balita pala ako sa inyo. Vietnam and China to enhance security, defense, and economic collaboration. Bagong balita ito. Take note, Vietnam is one of the most aggressive country when you talk about claims in the South China Sea. They occupied more features in the South China Sea. But take note, they even have a new agreement or a new kind of collaboration with China on enhanced security, defense, and economic collaboration. So ibig sabihin, they recognize na may dispute sila pero they can still work with China, even on security issues and even in defense. So ibig sabihin, maganda ang relationship ng Vietnam at China despite the may dispute sila sa South China Sea, despite the fact na actually Vietnam occupies a lot of features in the South China Sea. Pero tayo, very challenging ang ating relationship with China, lalo na pagdating sa South China Sea issue at even on foreign policy. Kasi ang ating relationship hindi maganda with China at the moment, politically and diplomatically. So bakit ganon? When in fact, Vietnam, you see, yung bagong news pa lang yan, ngayon lang gabi yan, at saka ngayong araw lang yan, at the same time, Malaysia, you can see Malaysia is really, deepening its relationship with China, despite the fact na they're also talking about the South China Sea dispute, how they can resolve it bilaterally, so at even multilaterally speaking. So
Opo.
tayo lang talaga ang medyo naiiba sa ASEAN at this time,
Opo.
under BBM.
Yung Pilipinas at Vietnam, ito po bang dalawang bansa yung parang magkakalapit sa kung pag-uusapan yung dispute with China?
Actually, ang Vietnam at ang Pilipinas, kung titignan mo, ito yung mga strong claimant states na nakikipag-gitgitan dyan sa South China Sea. At saka kung titignan mo, mas agresibo pa nga ang Vietnam kasi marami siyang ino-occupy nga na features. Pero if you really look at the foreign policy of Vietnam, it's very balanced and it is, how do you call that? It's independent. Wala siyang big brother or yung foreign policy niya is not leaning even to America, to Russia, or even to China. It's really independent. So, kaya madali silang makipag-engage sa China even though may dispute sila. In the same manner that Malaysia is like that. Pero ang problema kasi ng Pilipinas is we're very much leaning to the United States. In some way, we're being used by the United States for the United States to be able to intervene sa South China Sea. Kasi may interest ang United States sa South China Sea, ang tinatawag nilang freedom of navigation. But that freedom of navigation refers to the warships of the United States na freely makapasok at mag-roam around dyan sa South China Sea. When in fact, hindi dapat. Kasi mga warships yan eh. Pero well, yun ang kanilang interest eh. At saka, ang ano din nila, pero hindi yan maritime, hindi yan commercial ships na nandyan, no? Ang gusto talaga ng United States is yung tinatawag ng freedom of navigation operation, pero these are warships nila. So may iba pang interest ang United States dyan. So in a way to control also the area and to maintain their hegemony in the Asia-Pacific region, which is being challenged by China at the moment. So ang nangyayari sa atin, ang foreign policy kasi natin is very much leaning to the United States. To a greater extent, ang pressure nang gagaling sa United States. Kaya tayo nagkakaroon din ng gitgitan with China. Kasi ang usapan, ang nangyayari kasi, hindi not necessarily issue ng South China Sea na yan eh. It's an issue between the two superpowers na eh. Kaya lang, tayo ang proxy eh. Tayo ang pawn. Because the United States will never engage China directly. Kasi alam nilang matatalo sila. Pero they need a pawn na gagawa ng dirty work nila in Asia. And that's the Philippines. This is really the truth, and that's the fact of, and that's really the case, you know.
Ang kapansin-pansin lang din, kasi itong mga kapitbahay natin na mga bansa, kahit na may dispute din sila dyan sa pinagagawang teritoryo with China, pero nagagawa pa rin nilang pag-usapan beyond doon sa dispute, yung pagpapalakas ng kanilang ekonomiya, pagpapalakas ng kanilang trade, hindi lang ng China na kumbaga parang katunggali nila dyan sa disputed area, pati rin dito sa mga malalaking kumpanya galing sa Amerika, kagaya po ng Google na sinasabi nga ay mag-i-invest dyan sa Thailand, bago lang, 1 billion US dollars. Yung sa Malaysia naman, yung mga US tech giants kagaya ng Google, Microsoft, Amazon at iba pa, nagpo-propose na rin ng investment dyan sa mga Malaysia. Meron din sa Indonesia, yung sa Amazon din. And tayo sa Pilipinas, well, nawala na yung magandang relasyon with China. Ang meron tayong magandang relasyon kuno dahil may ironclad commitment Estados Unidos. Pero katakataka, bakit dito sa mga kapitbahay natin na may dispute din with China, doon na bumabagsak yung mga investment? Ba't hindi sa atin na meron tayong ironclad commitment? Sila pala sa atin.
Magandang tanong yan at magandang observation yan, Admar. Kasi ganyan nga sinasabi ko. Malaki ang bintahe or advantage ng other ASEAN countries, especially yung malalaki like Thailand, even Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam. Vietnam is way ahead of us in terms of economic development and prosperity, no? Kasi bakit nga? Kasi nga balance ang kanilang foreign policy, independent ang foreign policy nila. They're not leaning to any of the superpowers or major powers in the Asia-Pacific region and even beyond the Asia-Pacific. So ang nangyayari sa kanila, they can attract investment coming from the Western side, even from the United States, and they can also attract investment coming from China kasi kaibigan nila ng China. Kaibigan din nila yung West. So they benefit from this kind of balancing act. Kaya ganun, 'di ba? At saka one thing though, and on another thing also, very stable ang political context ng mga countries na to. Malaysia, maybe they have domestic problems politically, but if you really look at them, even Vietnam and Indonesia and Thailand, may mga problema din sila domestically na politika, pero stable in general sense, very stable, you know? So ang nangyayari, wala silang problema na they will be used as a pawn in a conflict, in a military conflict, or in a possible war with China. Walang ganon. Walang ganong shadow ang mga countries na to. So in a way, very attractive sila when it comes to foreign investment. May it be state investment or maybe the private investment coming from all countries, including the western side, including the United States. Ang problema ng Pilipinas, una, kalaban mo ang China. Kasi totoo naman, ang foreign policy ni BBM is very much leaning to the United States. We have we have a very challenging relationship with China at the moment. Medyo problematic ang ating political relationship. It affects the economic side, in the economy. Pangalawa, andyan yung United States exerting very strong influence on the country, even domestically, and especially foreign policy-wise, especially the approach in the South China Sea. So it makes, alam mo yon, yung investor kasi, hindi ka papasok sa isang bansa na feeling mo parang volatile masyado ang sitwasyon. And anytime, pwede siyang ma-involve sa isang military conflict because siya yung pawn ng isang superpower as against to another superpower. So, ang mga seryoso at malalaking kumpanya will never risk investing in a country na ganon ang sitwasyon. Ganon din ang kanilang nababasa. So, hindi yan. Kasi syempre, delikado ang investment mo, 'di ba? Hindi mo alam kung mag-generate ng income yan or madi-disrupt yan anytime soon. So, hindi talaga. 'Yun ang problema ng Pilipinas. Another one is domestic. Ang domestic na sitwasyon ng Pilipinas, mayroon kang in a way political instability na hindi pa naman ganun kalaki or ang magnitude niya, pero makikita mo may mga gitgitan between contending contending powers, politicians or political families in the country. Pangalawa, ang corruption mo, very mataas ang index ng corruption mo sa Pilipinas at this time. So, yun yung mga factors na yon ang nagkakaroon ng parang agam-agam ang mga seryoso at malalaking kumpanya na would want to invest in the country. So, instead of going to the Philippines, they would go to other countries in ASEAN na pwede rin nilang puntahan kasi mas stable at saka mas maganda actually kumbaga ang investment nila will generate revenue kasi aside from the fact na politically stable, balance ang foreign policy, walang kaaway sa Asia, at the same time pag nakita mo rin ang kanilang infrastructure development as mas maganda kaysa sa Pilipinas. I'm sorry, no, I love our country. I mean, I am a Filipino, pero this is the reality really of our country. So by knowing this reality, I hope that we try to adjust and change things in our country. Kasi pag hindi natin binago to, lagi nating makikita na ang lahat ng investor pupunta sa iba, tayong naiiwan. Darating ang point na maiiwan ang Pilipinas. Imagine that may report pala ang may bagong report na natanggap pala ako, just para lang isingit ko, Admar, kasi importante ito, na bagong report na tayo daw ay ang the Philippines ranked 29th out of 243 countries and territories in the biannual conflict index by armed conflict location and event data. Parang mataas yung ranking natin at parang malapit tayo sa Myanmar. So parang hindi ito magandang balita kasi kung tatanungin mo ang mga investors na papasok sa Pilipinas, madi-discourage sila kapag nakikita nila na ang Pilipinas is one of the countries na may conflict or seemingly may involved sa conflict. So yun yung mga reasons. Kasi naman, hindi natin makayang balansehin ang ating foreign policy. So yun yung mga problema ng Pilipinas.
Prof,
ngayon.
Opo, si MJ po ito. Prof, good evening. Ma'am, marami pong mga rason talaga na bakit magkakaroon po ng lack of sympathy ang mga kapitbahay natin sa ASEAN. Gaano kalaking point yung ni-raise po ni former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong last February, yung sinabi niya, sure ba kayo, Pilipinas, na gusto nyong maging battleground ng dalawang nag-uumpugang bansa? Parang ganun yung iisa yung saloobin ng mga kapitbahay natin sa ASEAN na ang naging spokes on that issue ay si former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong.
Ng Singapore, no?
Mm.
Okay. Tama, kasi actually yung pagkakasabi nga ng former Prime Minister ng Singapore is parang ano na yun parang it's a question na lang Pero kung titignan mo ang sitwasyon at this time, under BBM, tayo ang battleground actually ng dalawang nag-uumpugang bato. And it's happening already and it's been happening for certain period of time. Ang tanong kasi, bakit tayo nagiging battleground? Ano yung problema? Yung foreign policy kasi ng Pilipinas talaga is medyo leaning to the United States. We're very confrontational with China na parang tingin natin kaya natin pero actually hindi naman. So ang sentiment kasi na yan ng former Prime Minister ng Singapore is actually the sentiment of other ASEAN countries. I'm not kidding. That is really the sentiments. And every time I had conversation and I attend a conference and it's attended by ASEAN countries at napapag-usapan ang Pilipinas, napapag-usapan ang regional security, peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region, especially in Southeast Asia, laging nagiging topic ang Pilipinas kasi nga yung foreign policy na very much leaning and very much beholden to the United States na sinasabi nila na baka pagmulan ng gulo ang magmula sa Pilipinas na apektado ang buong region. Yun talaga. So, yung mga statement ng mga ASEAN leaders and even former prime ministers, kasi nga 'di ba, sinabi ko nga doon sa post ko sa Facebook, ang ASEAN leaders kasi, they don't criticize directly other ASEAN countries and ASEAN leaders. Pero ipapackage nila ang message nila in such a way, it's either in a question or in a saying or in a statement na not pointing to specific country. But if you really think deeply, alam mo kung sinong pinatatamaan niya. Ganon sila Kasi non-confrontational nga ang values na ina-uphold ng ASEAN at ng ASEAN countries. So pero kung mag-iisip ka, alam mo nang pinatatamaan is Pilipinas. Even Mahathir, no? The Prime Minister Mahathir of Malaysia, ilang beses na siyang nagsalita na makikita mo at iisipin mo, it's actually pertaining to the Philippines. Pero hindi niya pinapangalanan ng Pilipinas. And even yung question na yon na sinabi nga ng former Prime Minister ng Singapore, it's already a question. Pero they know already that actually the Philippines is already the battleground ng dalawang nag-uumpugang malalaking bato, which is China and the United States. At kayo naman, pumapayag tayo na maging battleground, which is dapat hindi. Kasi hindi natin laban yan at hindi natin away yan. Sa kanila yan So let them, whatever they want, they can. Sila magde-decide nun kasi both of them are sovereign state. Pero tayo, as a country, we should insulate ourselves from this fight because this is not our fight. And we will be at the disadvantage if we will allow our country to be used by any other country or any power like the United States. Kasi tayo ang kawawa niyan. At the end of the day, tayo pa rin ang kawawa niyan. At saka yun nga, nasisira ang tinatawag nating good relation with other countries. Ngayon, hindi na lang China ang nagre-react. Russia is reacting already. And Russia, believe me, will not just sit down and just let the United States do its own dirty works through us. I don't think Russia will allow that. Kasi katulad ng mid-range missile system na nakadeploy sa Ilocos, di ba? Nasa lawag nga ata yan So, nagre-react ang Russia dyan. Hindi lang yung China. Precisely because there is something to it. Bakit ka nag-deploy, di ba? Bakit ka nag-deploy ng missile doon? Ano yung purpose mo? Kasi that is the first time in Asia-Pacific thus far after the Cold War. After Cold War, ito yung first time I think. Or even before the Cold War. Kasi yung Cold War sa Cuba It's the same as the Cuban Missile Crisis na nasa history ng Cold War So, yun yung sinasabi ko. So, parang nangyayari sa Pilipinas, we're creating enemies rather than friends. And mind you, ang ASEAN counterparts are not really happy with the way we do things, especially when you talk about militarization ng United States of the Philippines. Kasi militarization to deployment of mid-range missile system, it's a militarization. 9 EDCA bases, creating some installation pa na military and deployment of troops, and then our relationship with Japan, may RAA ka, and all of these things. These are all military and defense eh. Hindi naman siya economic eh.
Opo.
So, ang comfortable, ang ibang ASEAN countries of what's going on in the Philippines.
Opo.
And at the same time, hindi lang yung ASEAN countries, other countries in Asia as well.
Opo.
And even beyond. Kasi napapag-usapan niya ng mga experts on international relations and geopolitics, which I am also a part of. Kasi mayroon kaming coalition and we call it the Multipolar World Coalition. So, mga expert to from different countries, including European experts and even American experts, napapag-usapan talaga namin na ang Pilipinas talaga, because of its foreign policy under Pbbm, nalalagay tayo dun sa parang hotspot na pwedeng pagmulan ng gulo, which is hindi maganda at very sad reality for the country.
Opo.
Yun.
Prof, naninimbang rin po ba ang mga nakakausap po ninyong eksperto, mga iba't ibang lahi, hinggil po sa magiging resulta ng US elections by November? Malapit na po yan, Prof. 3 weeks, by 3 weeks or ilang less than a month na lamang natitira, botohan na po sa US. Kung magbabago po ba ang political landscape sa ASEAN regarding sa ating pong ugnayan sa US at ng Pilipinas?
Oo, pinag-uusapan din parang isang topic na palaging pinag-uusapan ang United States election this November. So isa yan sa pinaka-hot topic ng pinag-uusapan ng mga geopolitical expert, international relation expert sa mga circles, no, even in WeChat or even in different groups, no, and even online, no, dinidiscuss din. And sometimes I participate in this kind of discussion with colleagues and friends, no, na who are in this kind of field. Pero ang namin, ang sinasabi lang na ang naririnig ko at well, ako rin ang analysis ko is ang whoever wins dun sa election nila ng United States, I think the ASEAN countries except the Philippines walang problema kasi yung foreign policy nga nila is very stable. So it's not dependent on the United States. So sa kanila, kung manalo si Trump, okay lang. Manalo si Harris, okay lang. They will deal with the United States the way na kung paano nila ginagawa ngayon. So hindi siya ganoon ka lakas ang impact sa ibang ASEAN countries. Though ang pinaka maganda lang siguro is sinasabi din ng iba na pag halimbawa si Trump ang nanalo, probably the military build-up in the Asia-Pacific region may stop or may be reduced or may change. Na ikakalibrate yan at marireduce kasi kung titignan mo si Trump, ayaw niya na gumastos at ayaw niya na nai-stretch masyado ang military capacity ng United States outside of its own borders. So kung si Trump, pero kung si Harris, ang perception, it will continue kasi Democrat and Biden is a Democrat. So baka it's a continuation lang ng mga policies ni Biden. Kasi nga siya yung vice president ni Biden, 'di ba? So at saka Democrat 'yan. So ganun yung kanilang sinususugan. So parang ganun ang debate. Pero sa Pilipinas kasi crucial. Kasi we don't know if Trump will support BBM still, if Trump will be elected as president. Kasi magkaiba sila, well, ang ni Trump nga, hindi naman siya masyado dyan sa mga militarization na yan, at hindi ko alam kung magkaka-jibe si Biden, si Trump at saka si BBM. So there's a possibility na mag-recalibrate ang United States when it comes to their approach and relations in terms of support to the Philippines militarily and defense-wise sa Pilipinas kapag si Trump ang manalo. Pero kapag si Harris, we expect probably the same thing. Kasi nga, Biden's foreign policy, baka isususugan lang ni Harris yun. So may ganun na dynamics. Pero ang mas affected talaga kung sino man ang manalo sa United States na election is Philippines. China, in a way, yes, kasi magbabago yung mukha ng laban. It will, kung si Trump ang mananalo, I think ang gitgitan between China and the United States is more on economic and trade. Kasi yun yung ni Trump eh. Doon din sila kung titignan mo yung panahon niya na siya yung presidente, ganun ang gitgitan eh. Hindi siya masyado sa defense and military. Pero pag si Harris ang manalo, baka tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung build-up ng United States, ng military build-up nila sa Asia Pacific in preparation for whatever, na hopefully it's not a war preparation. At saka, syempre, magiging anxious ang China and Russia on that. So magkakaroon ka pa rin ng tension. But it's military, which is dangerous. More dangerous yan kaysa doon sa trade na bakbakan. Pero ang Pilipinas, affected yan. Kasi hindi mo alam paano ang mangyayari sa sa BBM administration in terms of support kung si Trump ang manalo. So yun yung crucial doon. I think the current administrations in a BBM, they understand this. I hope they do. But I don't know really if they understand the consequences of things. So we will see kung anong mangyayari doon sa relationship ng so-called ironclad relationship ng United States and the Philippines. When you talk about the South China Sea, when you talk about military aid and defense, if Trump wins.